to this week's Raqs Talks. I'm Parazad.
I'm Faiza.
And this week we have Amy Sigil.
Hi, Amy. How are you?
You two sound like you have done that before.
16 times to be exact.
You'll be 18.
I think you need a movement sequence to go along with that, and I'm looking forward to it in the next episode.
Yes, ma'am.
Something that can be ended, and then it goes on TikTok.
As a dance challenge.
I want a TikTok viral introduction. I'm looking forward to it.
Anyway.
Hi.
How are you?
Up and down, but mostly up.
Excellent.
So right before we started recording, we briefly were talking about the quarantine. How has this affected your business?
Yeah, 100%. It's affected it 100%, every aspect of the game. But I think that has pros and it has cons, of course. 100% it has awakened the community that we have built for the last 20 years. And I want to stay with most of the positive things, of course. And that's great. Like, I can absolutely tell the relationships that we have fostered and that people have been showing up, still talking, still doing interviews, still trying to do performances, still doing classes. I mean, we've really stepped up to the challenge, I think, as a community, and the 20 years of that build really shows right now. And then also I lost every job for 2 years practically, even mid 2021, but it has thrown me back into the hustle, and that's what keeps you alive, too much contentment, and I was starting to feel it. So I'm definitely on the grind right now, as with everybody else. I'm like trying to sling classes as well as do good work outside of dance. Yeah, it affected everything.
Yeah. It's crazy. The way we're experiencing this dance together, like the new way we all have to experience it. There's these showcases that like in person, they make a lot of sense. And we're trying to make that translate into this online format. And sometimes it works and sometimes it really doesn't. And it's challenging. But the cool thing about it is that now I'm getting to see dancers. I'm not limited to the people in and around LA. I can, we can interview you. My dance partner, Adrienne, we did a show a couple months ago, and we had people from all over the United States in that show. It was really cool because we got to just pick whoever we thought was going to be the best for that particular show. So that is one of the good things that has come from that. Unfortunately, I just bought this so that I could have something other than my TV as my background when I'm performing for people online, but we do what we do.
Yeah, I really feel so lucky. I don't know if you've seen the temple that I built in the backyard. Did you see that? Because we're on Zoom and I can totally do this. I gotta show you.
Yes.
What we built, and I didn't know why I was building it. It was a rather crazy dream, but I bought a house in a town that I'm not really vibing with yet. And so I told Raven, okay, listen, I'm not living next to my studio anymore. I'm living hours away from my friends. I have to build a studio, and we couldn't afford walls and stuff. So we built this outdoor studio, but wait until you see what it turned into.
Oh, wow.
There it is right there. It 20 by 24. It's got an amazing hardwood floor. If you can see that.
Gosh.
And it's got a roof. It's got 12 outlets and 2 USB ports. And it's completely in the elements. So it's it's going to be something to maintain, for real.
Yeah.
But I didn't understand exactly why I was developing this, and now I'm like, oh my gosh. I told Raven, because also the thing's not permitted. So Raven comes out actually just a few weeks ago, and she was like, you know what, you got to talk me down because I feel so stressed about this permit issue. And I was like, I don't fucking care. Without this temple, I seriously could have lost my shit. I don't care if I have to remove that myself piece by piece by piece and burn it to the ground. Without that sacred space right now, I'd be stuck in the house.
Yeah.
which is great. But I didn't understand, and now I'm just like so grateful for this space.
Nice. Just out of curiosity, what town are you in now?
I'm in Redding, California. 2.5 hours from the border of Oregon.
Yeah.
I went to school in Ashland, Oregon, and we frequently made that 2.5-hour drive to Redding for In-N-Out because it's the furthest north.
It's true. And I actually was homeless in Lithia Park in Ashland for a few years.
Really?
Yeah, and I did hair wraps. I was the hippie. Okay, so it would have been I figured this out before. It would have been in 1992 to like 1995. And I did hair wraps in the park for like $1 an inch.
Nice.
Ashland's the town for it. Really?
That park is amazing.
It's so beautiful. Yeah. I was very fortunate to get to spend the time I did there at the period that I went there because I went back recently, and a lot of things have changed that I wouldn't categorize as for the better. And I'm just like glad I had my time there. So
it's a sweet little town, Ashland. But no, I'm not in Ashland. How cool would that be?
I haven't been to Redding, but I knew that you were in Sacramento before, and my in-laws are in Placerville, so I just was like wondering if it was anywhere near there, just because I'm nosy. So
well, eventually you have to drive 5 if you live in California. So if you pass through Redding, you know where I'm at.
I would probably go to see you. If I was going to Redding, it would be for you. So now one of the things that our community has, one of the struggles that we've been dealing with is, what's the word I'm looking for? That word has just gone over there.
cool.
Terminology. And so you were one of the leaders in kind of like, hey, let's sit back and listen. And I would love to hear like some of your, like the process that you were dealing with. And I know that you went and sat at their feet to listen to how they felt about it. So I'd love to hear your story.
So much for asking that. And it's interesting because it really does coincide with this move to Redding. I bought a house 1 mile away from the Wintu Reservation. And before that, I was in Midtown Sacramento, super urban for about 20 years, just right on K and 16th. So I actually didn't have a lot of exposure to even the natural land unless I went outside of my home. So I moved here, and there's really billboards all over the town right now that say supportthetribe.net. And I'm like, oh, interesting. I mean, many, like you drive to my house and there's many billboards and signs in people's yards. So I was like, and this was 1 year ago, June. So recently. And I looked it up. The powwow is happening in September. I move in June and the powwow is happening in September, like the powwow. And it's like a mile from my house. I'm super excited to go to this powwow. And I get there, and in amongst all of the community announcements, there's a dance board for other powwows and dance rituals that are happening. And you're welcome to put a flyer on the Wintu Indigenous dance board of your dance classes. And I thought to myself in that very moment, am I about to put up improvisational tribal style on the powwow billboard? And that was like my first real mirror of reflection, where I was like, why do I feel weird about this? Why do I feel like I have to explain myself before I even put the flyer up? And I have to say that I am not one of the beginning people in this. I'm really quite in the middle. And this was brought to my attention in 2011 when Donna Mejia started talking about the term tribal. And very dear friends of mine, April Rose, I don't think she would mind me mentioning, was like, we can't use this word. This word is problematic. And that was in 2011. And I dug my heels in until 2020. And it was really this property next to these absolute tribal people, part of a tribe, that it was brought to my attention. So that's when I was like, okay, I need to dig deep a little bit. And I made some appointments with some of the I live in the Wintu, Pitt River, Klamath, and Shasta tribe lands, and right next to the Wintu people. So I made some appointments with a few different people from a few different tribal groups in the area. But I want to talk about Jack Potter, who is the cultural representative for the Wintu people. Super nice. Brought me into his amazing office with like the most amazing pieces of regalia. And I mean, it was so cool. But I tell him the big saga of tribal style, and he knows nothing about this dance. I mean, nothing. And he listens to it, and as the words are coming out of my mouth, like, he really does have this like amazing spirit about it and really beautiful. And at the end of it, he tells me a few things. He says, one, the reason why this is speaking to me now is that it's actually spirit talking to me about the name, and that the land makes the law. And he said, there were no spirits in Midtown Sacramento. And the reason why you're feeling it now is because I can tell you that these land spirits are alive. This is a tribal land. And he also said, everybody evolves differently, and we all evolve at different times in these different areas of our life, and to stay out of it. Anybody else's decision, I should stay out of it. And then he also said, once you find your name, you don't have to say that you're tribal anymore. He said, I would never call myself tribal. I am from the Wintu tribe. He said, so what is your name? Because it's not tribal. And I'm like, oh yeah, my name's not tribal. My name is not tribal. Absolutely not. And then I found Improv Team Sync, and I really wanted to stick with ITS because I know that that's like the big battle, is all the marketing, the branding. The format is like 20 years old now, 17 years old. So I'm like, shit, I need to find something that is going to fit into ITS moving away. And of course, team was the way to go. And then I found a journal entry from 2016 talking to myself about the word tribal. And it's interesting how long it took me, but it was so liberating. And I do feel really personal about the decision. So I really try not to make any judgment on where and how this style is developing. I'm just trying to go with my personal story. I support where people find their personal story. And I definitely want to stay in a really loving place if people want to keep the word tribal. For me, it's hard because I live next to the Wintu tribe. I can't do that. That's crazy. I can't do that. I can't even say it's tribal fusion because it's not. So I feel like I'm like, I don't know if I'm in a specific situation or if we should take that broader and everybody's in this situation, you know, like I don't know how far deep in it to go, but I know personally I cannot move forward with improvisational tribal style in this land.
Yeah.
And I do think some dancers are teaching tribal dances. I know dancers that have studied and are teaching tribal dances. But Amy Sigil is not one of them. We know this. Forever. I am not teaching tribal dances, you know? So do I think it has all the beautiful things that also come along with other tribes? Yeah, of course. Of course. But as a label, I'm just like, what? And I think I got away with it for a long time. I think even people who felt really strongly about it knew how much I loved this. Know how much I love this and my dedication to this dance form. So I think I was forgiven for too long too.
Interesting.
I was allowed to slide a little bit.
I appreciated like when everyone was like super like rah about it. I appreciated that you were a kind of a calming voice in it.
Definitely.
And just very like, hey, here's my experience.
Thank you for saying that. That was so important to me. And I really was like, can I learn like this?
Right.
Like, could I let everybody talk and not freak the fuck out? And can I learn about this? And I felt the same way. I thought that the discussions that happened during that time around the Improv Team Sync specifically was very knowledgeful, very calm. Yeah. Thanks for saying that. It was a goal.
It showed. I mean, that was, yeah, you were very, because there were a lot of screechy white ladies And and you know, we don't need more of that.
If it's offensive in any way and I can change that, like, I think I could just say yes to that.
Yeah.
I'm not the first in the game in any way. You know, I'm in the middle of the entire game. Not the first to make an improv format, not the first white lady to be a belly dancer. Really, I'm not the first of anything. So I think everything that I can do, easy.
I love that attitude.
I kind of have a crazy idea of, why don't we make up a name? Because I do think it's a thing. So the whole like fusion, is it just a fusion style? Like, there are of course a million subcultures, but you know, when you see a tribal fusion dancer, you do. They do the arm dip, they do like certain moves that is a thing. You know what I mean? Like that you wouldn't see in Egypt, but you're also not going to see in hip hop, and it's like a different way. So it's like, it is a thing. And I think we have the opportunity to name this thing. But because we're like holding on to this word, like, let's make up a word that doesn't mean anything. If we try to find words that are already there, they already mean something. So it's like trying to say that this is bread, and I'm going to fight my whole life and say that this is bread, even though like the real majority, we've agreed that this is a glass, you know? So in English, we've agreed this is a glass. But why are we trying to find the name in a dictionary? Oh, it's folkloric fusion. Oh, it's this. It's like, it's a new thing. We could name it Skippity Skop, and then we could fight the same for this word, and we could all just own it, and we could be the people that name this dance for.
I think that's a much better solution.
I agree.
Unless you're doing something that you can trace back, I get it. And then you say that there's elements of. If we always have, you know, it's like if somebody said, what's the name of your group? And I say Unmata, they still don't know what that means. I have to be like, oh, it's a dance troupe and it has elements of blah, 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 blah. Like, we don't have to leave our roots. We don't have to like pretend we're not a part of belly dance. We can find a name for this style, and then we could say this has influences of Raqs Sharki, Jamila Salampur, flamenco, electronica. But why muddle up another word?
But it's true. Like, why muddle up another word? Because the thing is that like, you don't have to necessarily be hyper accurate in your description of your thing, being like, well, because it has, we're folkloric transnational hip hop fusion. Like, you don't have to say all that, because we don't call ballet fencing, even though the original forms of ballet come from the Italian school of fencing. We just say like, oh, it's ballet, and it's like, we're like, oh, well, yeah, so the original foot positions are taken from the Italian school of dueling arts, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We don't call it that. We just say, oh, it's ballet. Like, I think completely being like, yeah, we do this thing. It's called Skippity Skop. It's real fun.
Yeah, you would love it.
You should do it sometime.
I think it's Skippity Skop now. I think you just named it, Amy. I think you just named it.
A while back, I was trying to put Salampur, Parker, and Bryce, and it was only because I'm on the West Coast. I don't mean in disrespect to all the millions of other dancers, but I was like, what does it sound like if I'm like Sala Brycer, and I was making up all these crazy words. I had a good one, but I can't remember really what it was.
So I'm going to tell you a way that you influenced me heavily, and this is many years ago. Probably 15 years ago. Did you came to 2 or 3 Hipsophiries? I think you came to 2.
At least 2.
And this wasn't at Hipsophiri, but it was around that time. And remember that event, what was that called? Tribe. Now I can't remember it. But anyway, Unmata performed, and you guys did that Tahitian running around in that squat.
Ne'i.
And what is it called?
Ne'i.
I was like, ah. And like, I made everyone in my troupe, which was at the time, it was Hiplash. When we were in rehearsal, I was like, we're going to learn how to do that. And Bloom was like, my knees? No. And so we were like trying. I never have mastered that. However, that was the beginning of my obsession with level changes. So you have her to thank for that.
Thanks.
And yeah, so then I just really worked on making sure my core was strong and really strengthening my quads so that I could do like a drop and a pop back up, you know, or whatever. If the music said that I could do that, then I would do that. And I mean, since COVID, I have lost some of my strength, and I've been working recently on trying to build that back up. But that has, over the last 15 years, that ended up being something that was a regular part of my dance performance. And I would make my students and my troops, they all had to like get really good with level changes, because that's also adds dynamic, a beautiful dynamic to the performance, which I had not been taught previously, because it's not something that you necessarily do in Egyptian style. You know, I had been studying with Zara Zuhair at the time. I don't think I've ever seen her do a pop and hop back up.
No, but it's like, I know for me, like I encountered it more when I briefly studied hip hop. Like they would do that, but it was funny because it was always like the 5'0" choreographer who'd be like, "Okay, here you go, pop pop in this amount of time," and I'm like 5'10", and I'm like,
same.
So it'd be funny because everybody would be like, "You're so like explosive when you dance." Like, it's because it takes me a lot longer to get there and back, so I have to be like, "Kaka."
But those were fun days. I feel like inviting you to Hips of Fury was how you and I became friends. And so I really, really appreciate that you participated and that you danced at Hips of Fury and that you helped judge. And we were just talking to Andalee, who does Hot Raqs competition. Part of the conversation was just talking about how like she wants it to be positive and that kind of thing. And I was always really grateful that everyone that I asked to be a judge, not everyone, there was one that was not invited back. Mostly everyone gave feedback that was, the intention was to be helpful. As someone who is doing competitions now, like I didn't do them for a long time, but I'm back to doing them. That's why we do a competition, is so we can get that feedback. Though, I will say, eventually, I do intend to bring back Hips of Fury.
Yes, I'm thinking about bringing back the Blood Moon one year too. I want to do
Yay!
Yeah.
So this lovely lady, because you invited Hiplash, my troupe, to perform at Blood Moon in 2009, and that was the disease year, and she gave all of us tuberculosis. So,
oh, okay.
I was blonde then.
Yes, tuberculosis.
Yes, and then everyone in my troupe died at the end of our set.
Except me.
Except for her.
I killed them.
It was like being at a White House event. Blood Moon was really, really fun. How many of those did you produce?
I did 13.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
I didn't realize it was so many.
2000 to 2013 without 1 year off, and then it just pretty much didn't happen after 2013.
Wow.
Yeah. But I still have a couple themes that I really want to do. I have a great Blood Moon crew, an old timer Blood Moon crew, you know, so I want to do it too.
That would be wonderful. In the show that we were in, you had one performance. Everyone was like sitting on folding chairs, and you were sitting there, and that was a moment when I realized you can dance with every part of your body. Because one of the things that you were just having, like, people were just doing their fingers up, and it was like perfectly with the music, and you guys were just sitting there and doing this thing with the fingers, and it was mesmerizing. I've learned so much from you, Amy. So.
I mean, and that's one of the things that, like, I really love about this style of dance, and you and Umana in particular, is that there's so many, like, there's just so many moments in my mind that are like Umana moments, and like one of them was Blood Moon as well. It was addiction. It was addiction. On either side, there were two girls that were using heroin, and then there were two girls on either side that were like trying to be like their better angels, trying to tell them not to do it. And it was all of but there was so much hair dancing. That's what and it's so funny because I know this couldn't have happened, but like in my mind, I remember this moment where it was like the whole like reverse hair thing. I'm like, that didn't happen. That's definitely out of like Across the Universe or something. But I'm sure if Amy could have figured it out, she would have used it. But like it was moments like that. It was like the moments like combat with Flowbots. that you did the pirate ship, and like you just have so many moments that you're just an imaginative and like expressive person. Like I feel so many people, a lot of the times we get kind of stuck in the idea of like, okay, so we can move up, down, and we can move around the stage. It's like, no, what other shapes can you make? And I feel like that's something that you have always in your dance been able to explore.
Thank you so much, and thank you for remember like those little moments too from like the pirate ship and everything. These were like decades ago, and those are my favorite moments as well. My favorite moments.
So what are you doing these days?
All right, I'm on the hustle. I'm doing lots of Zoom. I'm doing straight up ITS with like a splash of dance church on Sunday mornings. But ITS, she fucking showed up for me. Seriously, I was floored. So I go in and out of love with ITS, you know, 17-year-old baby. Sometimes I really love it, and sometimes I'm like, let me out of my box. Let me out. And I had Unmata to let me out of my box, and they did ITS, but we got to do a lot of other things. And so sometimes ITS, I would just be like, oh, ITS. So we could just pull that out, you know, out of our back pockets. And now that Unmata isn't here and I'm starting to teach online, it's been ITS. Like it's been people interested in the certification, wanting to feel that community, wanting to use the vocabulary that they know. I'm sure that all of the improv formats right now maybe are feeling that, where everybody's like, oh my gosh, I just want to show up and do a pivot, shift, step, half turn more than anything. More than anything. I want to put my arms up in the air and do this. And more than anything. So yeah, I'm super stoked, and it really inspired a ton of work on ITS. I'm finishing the level 5. I think it's almost done. And I don't know if you've seen any of the little cameos, but we flipped everything downbeat left, and we're now doing downbeat right and downbeat left with our choo-choo and our lower undulation with the twist, and we flipped the whole format, and that's been really fun, really hard. I don't do that in my format, so it's been like a complete brain fuck most of the time, but we're like giggling through most of the Zoom classes and lots of new work. So it's really been a lot of ITS for me and lots of Zoom. Like I said, I'm on the hustle. I'm trying to make money. Just bought this house a year ago and didn't have any work. Fortunately, I do have a partner who has a full-time job, and that's pretty amazing. We need 2 incomes, but it could be at a worse time. It's at a pretty good time for us. And I'm just trying to hustle. I'm just trying to do online classes, and now of course I'm trying to bank everything, get it all online, and I'm really thankful to Jatur Online. And thankful for my dance community that we've built for so long showing up. Even just the Wednesday evening classes are giving me life right now, because it's different. For someone like me, it's super different. I got a puppy.
Yes, I remember.
Tell us about the puppy.
Puppy is obnoxious as hell and super awesome, and she's 7 months old, and she's a black lab Doberman collie mix.
Aw, what's her name?
Nova.
Not what is the new name?
Skippity Scop.
Skippity Scop.
Skippity Scop. But she's been awesome, and I'm spending a lot of time at home. I'm close to my parents now. So really I'm just trying to teach a lot online and do fun things with the dog, and then also fight racism, and that includes terminology for us. When I was talking to all of the people I could find that would talk to me about the name change, I talked to an indigenous nurse named Glenn Campbell at the Wintu Healthcare facility, and he said, yeah, fucking use the word tribal. I don't care if you use the word tribal. And I said, I'm thinking about Improv Team Sync, and he said, that's a horrible name. He's all, that sounds like whiter than anything. It's like super white, like Improv Team Sync. He's like, I like tribal, and the way you describe it. And I went out there being like, I don't feel that way. I don't feel that way at all. And that was a good lesson for me too, because when I actually got the quote unquote green light that, you know, I shouldn't have been looking for anyways, I got the green light. And then I was just like, Amy, you are pumping the brakes on this because you don't like the name. You are not vibing with the tribal style right now. So we should just change it instead of talking about it for literally 9 years.
Literally.
People were like, you dropped the bomb. It was like January 2020. And I think it was Carrie who made a comment on somebody's comment, was like, she did not, like, this has been a discussion for literally 9 years. And then after I did that change, I had a couple of friends that were like, okay, are we going to change the names of your ridiculous, or are you going to change the ridiculous names of your moves now? And I'm like, oh yeah. So I don't know if you know this, but I went through the entire format of ITS just about 2 or 3 months ago, and I no longer use basic Egyptian. I use pivot shift step. I no longer have an Arabic. It's a lower undulation. The camel is called an upsurge. And I have realized through this anti-racism work, really, how deeply this is going, and that I have a touch step called the Egyptian. It turns out when you look up Egyptian in the dictionary, it does not mean touch step. This is a big cultural meaning. So for me to, like I said, muddle the word, it was Donna Mejia that was like, but you're muddling the other word of what Egyptian means. It doesn't mean you doing a touch step. So I went through the whole thing and was like, okay, what's okay with me right now? What's not okay with me right now? And now I'm working with the pivot shift step half turn.
That makes sense.
It looks the same as the other one did, but it feels better. And even one of my friends wrote and said that she has an Egyptian woman in her class. And when she first taught her the Egyptian, she was like, I guess this is your move, this is like the Egyptian. And the lady, of course, was like, I have never, no. Yeah. Gone to any Egyptian dances. I mean, they have hip work, but these arms.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
No. So yeah, I got to go through the whole format and change some terminology all the way through.
That is awesome. And I think that's wise because there have been a lot of things over the course of the 25 years that I've been belly dancing, that it's just like, why is this way? Yeah. Like, why do we do this?
Yeah. And we can add more education in this, it's like, I think the pushback is you don't want to erase the roots of the dance. And it's like, for sure. And I think one thing I can do is stop saying that the taksim is a figure eight. We know that the taksim is an amazing part of Egyptian music. Like, how dare I call a figure eight a taksim? You know what I mean? So now here's my opportunity to be like, this is your figure eight. It used to be called the taksim because the taksim is a slow or fast improvisational piece of the music where probably you would do this kind of movement if you were to hear this song, So it's like, here's my opportunity to clean it up a little bit instead of being like, this is the taksim. We keep picking words that mean other things.
That's okay. 2 things. One, that makes so much sense to me because I had to learn things backwards. Like, I learned the move, the taksim, and I did not know that taksim wasn't a reference to the move. It was a reference to music until later.
Did you ever listen to me ever?
No, clearly.
But yeah, I learned it backwards too. I learned the taksim as a figure eight. I think I even spell it funny.
I feel like a Maya being called a Maya, as long as, then again, it's like, they're like, but why? It's because of Maya Medwar.
Yeah, I'm like,
I was going to say, I understand from Suhaila because of Maya, but I also wonder, I love the beautiful part of it, and I think I could tell that story, from Suhaila saying that there was a dancer named Maya, and when she first came over and they made this, she did this move a lot. This is a figure eight that moves from top to bottom. Let me describe what this movement is that Maya did. And I think that way we pass along that knowledge, so when somebody else uses the term, then they understand that,
But I mean, it makes so much more sense to be like, this is your figure eight going this way, this is your figure eight going that way, as opposed to being like, Maya and taksim are the opposites of each other, but their names come from the
improvisational part in the music, and this is this lady.
Exactly.
So, but I mean, these are beautiful spirits, but I think we can put this spirit, like I said, that's the pushback. People are always like, but what about the story? And I'm like, tell the story tell the story. Absolutely. This made me dig a little bit deeper too in some of the movements when I was going through the format, and Sevillanas. I don't know if you ever learned Sevillanas in the ATS format, So it was in the ATS format, and then I brought it over into the ITS format. Then it kind of changed back in the ATS format. But when I was looking through the thing and I got to the vocab Sevillanas, I actually thought to myself, so I know there's a place in Sevilla, Spain, and I know this dance comes from there, but I thought to myself, I don't know what a Sevillanas is. I really don't know. Like, I know this is a word from Spain. I know that it's a specific region, and I know this is a dance, and I haven't even fucking looked it up. And I am calling this movement a Sevillanas. Like, what? So I actually looked it up, and it turns out Sevillanas is from this area, but it's a 9-part choreographed duet. And mostly flamenco is solo work. So when you do this 9-part choreographed duet, it is a Sevillana. And I'm just like, well, this is obviously not a Sevillana. It's an 8-count move. And when I looked at it, there was some inspiration from it that has traveled down, but it was far, far, far removed. And it was cool because it actually, doing this work, I'm learning so much, of course, but I'm actually digging deeper, and I'm being like, can I call this a floreo? Yes or no? Amy Sigil, do some research and you decide, make some decisions, make some changes, and look at yourself.
Well, we have kept you for a while. So tell us, before we say goodbye, tell us where we can find you on social media.
Yeah, well, I just built a couple new websites, so you can find me at amysigil.com, and the online dance studio is up and running. Hot Pot is in the virtual world now. She was set free, so hotpotstudios.com. I'm doing lots of Zoom classes and banking the classes like everybody else, so you can totally find me under Amy Sigil on Facebook, Instagram, and the new websites with all up-to-date information.
Ooh,
yeah, brand new and shiny.
Nice.
It was great to catch up with you two. I'm just so happy to see you two again.
I know, it's just nice to see your face and hear your voice. Well, that was Amy Sigil, our friend, and as usual, she was amazing. So thank you, Amy, for joining us. That's it for this week's Raqs Talks. I'm Faiza.
I'm Parazad. Please give us a like, comment, and share if you haven't already. Otherwise, subscribe, and we will see you next week. Masalama!